Part 2. Political Warfare, the Maoist Insurgency Model. A Concept Primer, the Counter-State and Political Warfare. Marxism flows through the Maoist political warfare model, just as the dialectical engine of Marx seeks an operational plan. The Maoist insurgency seeks a strategic design that infuses as it informs. They are intrinsic to each other's nature. As Marcuse recognized, Mao executed Marx's strategy. Mao Zedong, along with the leadership cadre of the early Chinese Communist Party, was classically trained along Marxist-Leninist lines. Lenin created the Communist International, the Comintern, in Moscow in 1919. A Comintern agent showed up in China in 1920. The Communist Party of China was formed in 1921, and the Chinese Party's Third National Congress elected Mao Zedong to the Central Executive Committee and the Central Bureau in 1923. In the early 1920s, key Chinese Communist Party leadership cadre formed cells in Paris, from which Zhou Enlai made frequent visits to Berlin to meet with the Comintern leadership. The Chinese Communist Party relations with the Comintern were generally amicable. When the Comintern was disbanded in 1943, Mao reflected on its great utility in the early days. Maoist concept of political warfare. Maoist methodology is described as synchronized violent and nonviolent actions, which Mao called political warfare. This approach envisions the direct use of nonviolent operational arts and tactics as elements of combat power. Political warfare operates as one of the 5 components of an activity undertaken by the counter-state. In Maoist insurgencies, the counter-state is essential to seizing state power. Functioning as a competing state within an existing state, it is complete with an alternate infrastructure, which tightly controls and regulates the insurgency, recruiting manpower from a wide variety of strata. To achieve the objectives set for the counter-state, Mao developed the concept of mass line along with 5 components: united fronts, violence, political warfare, international action, and nonviolence. Mass line and the 5 components are listed below. Mass line. Organizing an alternative society through the construction of clandestine infrastructure, that is, a counter-state. In dialectical terms, if the state is thesis, then the counter-state is its anti-state. Local socioeconomic grievances and aspirations are addressed by cadres, who then connect solutions to the party's political mechanism. As with all political action, appeal to perceived needs, not only grievances but also hopes and aspirations, are sought in order to win allegiance for the purpose of mobilization. The approach seeks a mass base. As noted, Marcuse centered America's mass line strategy in the Academy. United front. Making common cause with individuals and groups who share concerns but not necessarily party goals. While armed political movements are capable of addressing perceived needs, this does not necessarily bring with it the momentum to overcome the natural fear of participating in what is, after all, an illegal, underground, and dangerous endeavor. Fellow traveler status, even if this status is concealed by the organization concerned, offers an alternative route that provides benefits to insurgencies in the form of advancing legal, open organizations that swell the mass base. Violence. The new alternative society, existing as it does illegally and clandestinely, necessarily relies upon armed action to maintain its security within and without. The quote-unquote liberation struggle progresses through 3 phases. Initially, the revolutionary movement will be on the defensive. Then it will seek to achieve stalemate, and finally, it will transition to the offensive. During each phase, a particular form of warfare drives the dynamic. During the defensive stage, terror and guerrilla actions lead. During the stalemate phase, mobile warfare, maneuver warfare dominates. This phase will see insurgent main force units, equivalents to government formations, take the field but not to hold territory. Then, in the final phase, offensive operations will seek the seizure of terrain, the so-called war of position. Political warfare, using nonviolent methods as an adjunct to violence. For example, participating in processes calculated to undermine the morale of enemy forces or offering to engage in negotiations. These methods can be implemented at the strategic, operational, or tactical levels of warfare. Unlike the United Front, Mao conceived of political warfare as a force multiplier. The United Front is a line of operation unto itself. International action. Although not as prominent an element during Mao's struggle as it became to his pupils, international pressure upon the state, or in favor of the insurgents, was recognized as an important element in the equation. Nonviolence. The purpose of this line of effort is to grow the movement, increase allies through information operations and agitprop, etc., that synchronize with other direct and indirect action. Mass line activities seek direct control of the information infrastructure of the United States, including the mainstream media and the educational infrastructure. Through this control, the left can identify local grievances and package their solutions within narratives and lexicons that further their overall support from within the general population. Expressed as a United Front activity, Mao recognized this back in 1944. Quote, "To link oneself with the masses, one must act in accordance with the needs and wishes of the masses. All work done for the masses must start from their needs and not from the desire of any individual, however well-intentioned. It often happens that objectively the masses need a certain change, but subjectively they are not yet conscious of the need, not yet willing or determined to make the change. In such cases, we should wait patiently. We should not make the change until, through our work, most of the masses have become conscious of the need and are willing and determined to carry it out. Otherwise, we shall isolate ourselves from the masses. Unless they are conscious and willing, any kind of work that requires their participation will turn out to be a mere formality and will fail. There are two principles here. One is the actual needs of the masses rather than what we fancy they need, and the other is the wishes of the masses, who must make up their own minds instead of our making up their minds for them." Unquote. That the masses objectively need a certain change is the universal. That they are subjectively not yet conscious of the need is the particular in need of a dialectical negation to purify the subjective so it can merge with the objective. Under the Marxist concept of democracy, the totalitarian leadership is democratic because, with scientific certitude, scientific socialism, which is scientism, it possesses the objective consciousness to recognize the people's needs, which gives them the authority to take charge in order to guide the people to where they ought to go, and would go themselves if they too shared in the objective awareness, the Gnostic knowledge. In this role, the totalitarian leadership truly can declare itself to be the vanguard of the proletariat, leading a people's democracy, Hegel's Napoleonic figure as explained by Dostoevsky. As this analysis transitions from Hegelian-informed Marxism to Mao's political warfare schema, the language of analysis will likewise transition. This does not, however, reflect a transition in kind, but rather of emphasis. From strategic design to strategic execution. Though there are generic concepts of insurgency and differing variations of political warfare, this analysis follows the Maoist political warfare model because, for the last 47 years, America has been on notice that this is the attack vector the American left adopted to seek America's negation. In order to conceptualize conflicts along the strategic and operational lines the left uses to destroy America, it is necessary to apply those same concepts to the conflicts associated with them. Specific orientation to the Maoist counterstate platform drives the requirement to use its associated doctrinal lexicon to the exclusion of competing terminologies. It is vital that we understand Maoist terminology, as defined above, in order to conceptualize not only what the left is doing and why, but also how, so that we may identify weaknesses in the left's overall approach in order to exploit them. Adjusting for the contemporary information environment and global communications and travel, the doctrinal template of Maoist political warfare accurately captures the activities the American left uses today at the strategic level. For this reason, a review of the Maoist insurgency is in order. On the transition from strategic design to strategic execution, while the Maoist insurgency lexicon is used to discuss the Colorado Democracy Alliance, it could just as easily be explained in terms of Marx, from critical philosophy to the otherisms of repressive tolerance. For example, from the description of the Colorado Democracy Alliance provided below, one can see the double-meaning use of the term democracy, the leading role played by overprivileged men, a middle-class proletariat of operators, and emphasis on the negative because such plans have nothing positive to offer. The use of united fronts and the overarching drive to center objectives in statist outcomes. Ominously, from an American political party perspective, while the alliance reflects a campaign apparatus never seen in Colorado or the United States, from a larger historical perspective, it does reflect the left's ongoing transition to its historic archetype form, the vanguard of the proletariat. The transition from design to execution is seamless. The Colorado Democracy Alliance will serve as an illustrative example of the political warfare concept. There are good reasons to know that this type of activity is going on in other states, Minnesota, for example. An illustrative example, the Colorado Democracy Alliance. Transitioning to today's political warfare environment, the Colorado Democracy Alliance, as discussed in Adam Schrager and Rob Whitwer's 2010 The Blueprint, How the Democrats Won Colorado and Why Republicans Everywhere Should Care, will provide the example. The Colorado Democracy Alliance. At a Denver area conference room in 2004, deep-pocketed leftist contributor activists called a meeting with strategists to discuss and execute a plan to remake Colorado that included a blueprint for winning elections structured to fundamentally alter the fabric of America. The four donors did not agree on public policy. They only agreed on the goal: victory. And so, the Gang of Four, Pat Stryker, Stryker Medical Implants, Rut Bridges, a software developer and millionaire, Tim Gill, founder of Quark and a gay rights activist, and Jared Polis, a dot-com millionaire and now member of the Colorado congressional delegation, joined forces to fund their plan of radical transformation. Originally called the Round Table, it would later be known as the Colorado Democracy Alliance, the precursor to the Democracy Alliance, a national network of progressive donors that support a donor-advised fund that funds hundreds of grassroots organizations to fulfill the core mission of a radicalized political party without the burden of political deal-making. The premise was simple: victory at any cost. Compromise inhibits victory. Political parties engage in compromise to advance a policy or political agenda that waters down the results. Unsurprisingly, the Colorado Democracy Alliance concluded that the root cause of leftist defeats was the Democratic Party itself. The solution was to build an extra-party infrastructure that duplicates the function of a political party while fomenting the fragmentation of the Democratic Party. If the Central Party and its leadership cannot respond to the demands of its membership, a new center must be established. Over the span of 16 months, between 2004 and 2006, the Gang of Four donated more than $8 million to create and fund a campaign apparatus never seen in Colorado or the United States. A new quote-unquote party, coordinated at the center but functionally independent, began to develop. New 501c3, 501c4, and 527 organizations sprang up to run voter education and registration, issue awareness campaigns, and attack advertisements. In turn, established grassroots organizations, including the Colorado Education Association, AFL-CIO, and Colorado Conservation Voters, an affiliate of the League of Conservation Voters, provided the ground game. Wealthy donors and a network of united progressive organizations helped transform Colorado from a reliably Republican state to a deep shade of blue. By 2006, Colorado Democracy Alliance strategies succeeded in flipping Colorado. With the Progress Now Colorado political director Alan Franklin's observation that, quote, all that was missing was a permanent infrastructure, unquote, one begins to discern not only the outlines of a counter-state from the actions taken, but the modern platform to support today's proletariat. The Colorado Blueprint became the model for campaigns and control across the United States. In 2005, Rod Stein founded the Democracy Alliance as, quote, the largest network of donors dedicated to building the progressive movement in the United States, unquote. At the 2008 Democratic National Convention held in Denver that chose Obama as the Democratic candidate, Stein spoke of the need to consolidate counterstate activities in the state through the placement of committed personnel at the senior levels of the government in what has popularly come to be known as the deep state. Quote, the reason it is so important to control government is because government is the source of enormous power. One president in this country, when he or she takes office, appoints 5,000 people to run a bureaucracy, non-military, non-postal service of 2 million people, who hire 10 million outside outsourced contractors, a workforce of 12 million people that spend $3 trillion a year. That number is larger than the gross domestic product of all but 4 countries on the face of the earth, unquote. This would be roughly 40 years after Marcuse initiated a campus strategy designed to stream into public and private sector cadres. In the 1970s, Rudy Duschke and Herbert Marcuse declared a strategy based on Mao's Long March, designed to negate America using Mao's insurgency model, i.e., political warfare. Masked beneath generic terms like the left and progressive are specific organizations with specific plans articulating attack strategies. More recently, the left has extended its influence into emerging technology and social media platforms. In line with the Colorado Democracy Alliance, insurgents seek to duplicate the functions of a political party outside of the traditional party infrastructure. In the case of Act Blue and social media, the left employs a shared service organization outside social media as a focal point for the activists of each individual group to engage in focused, online information and narrative distribution efforts. This mass line approach exploits real or perceived grievances in order to introduce socialist solutions that appear to emanate from the populace itself. To this end, the left focuses on students and youth, labor groups, media, and elites, because these are the groups that tend to have influence disproportionate to their size. Through the control of these groups, the left engineers cultural and social perceptions to garner support for policy prescriptions that directly benefit the left and their allies, while negating the opposition or anyone holding non-conforming views. The main priority for the left is control of the masses through control of the public's perception of events, a job made much easier with more than 170 Democracy Alliance affiliated groups working in concert. For example, immigration is an issue of state sovereignty, but the left packages it to the public as an issue of child separation and familial repatriation. School shootings are another example. The left manipulates these events to systematically repurpose the crisis to leverage its ongoing assault on the Second Amendment right to bear arms. This following introduction to mass line and the 5 concepts will help frame the estimate of the situation, after which they will be further developed in the section Lines of Effort.